Once upon a time, in the not so distant past, this past summer actually, my hubby wanted to plan a family vacation in August. And originally we were just going to do Canada's Wonderland, and that was it. But then I don't know what happened. One thing led to another, and he surprised me one day by asking how I felt about going to the medieval times, the dinner and joust tournament show thing. And I mean, I had heard about it. Growing up, I've always seen the commercials. But And he was like, awesome, because I've already booked it. So we were set to go. And on top of that, he decided that he wanted a cape. Yep. The very same husband who scoffs at dressing up pretty much every other day of the year decided that for the medieval times, he wanted to dress up. All right, then. I mean, to a cosplaying wife, does he have to say anything else? No. No, I jumped in head first and made us all a little something. Now, of course, I only had like 2 weeks to do this all in. You know, we were cutting it kind of close, and I didn't want to overtax myself. So I kept things rather simple, and I made like one piece for everybody so we could have a costume-esque look. And that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. What those pieces were and how I made them and what they all looked like in the end. Hi there, I'm Mina. Welcome to my channel, or if you've been here before, welcome back. Okay, to start with, I will give you a rundown of my look, which I am currently wearing, just for farts and giggles. Okay, so before I show you the look, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory. I have been doing genealogy research in the last few years. Long and short of it is, I found relatives in the distant-ish past from Scotland. So when my husband said he wanted medieval costumes for medieval times, I started to look up medieval Scotland. And unfortunately, beyond the fantastical, we don't really know how accurate the records are, and the stories are probably made up kind of things, there's not that much in the way of women's history from medieval Scotland. At least that's what I've found so far. And I've only done like a cursory search. I haven't dove deep into that. I had 2 weeks to get these costumes together, so, you know, haven't had that much time to really look into it. But I do plan on doing that. Anyway, so for my costume, I wanted to lean into my Scottish ancestry and work with what I found as far as, you know, what I could find. So what I did for my costume is this, essentially. So I started with, it's either known as a shift or a chemise, or it might have other names, but that's what I know it as. The basic cotton or linen undergarment that was traditionally worn basically throughout history. So I think it's safe to assume that Scottish women would have worn this in medieval times as well. And I made this particular piece back in 2020, I think, for some Hobbit cosplays. And I will link in a card above, as well as in the description below, my Becoming a Hobbit playlist if you're interested in more detail about how this shift came about. It is a full like dress piece. So if I lift up my skirt, ooh la la, it's still, don't mind the leggings. We are fully in October, but that's beside the point. Anyway, there we go. So the shift goes all the way down. It's just below the knee. Okay, and then I put this skirt on top. This is like a Swedish, it's a curtain panel. Let's just call it what it is. I made this as well, and that will be in the Becoming a Hobbit playlist. This was for my original character Hobbit. The new additions to medievalify this look. Oh, I did. You'll see in some pictures. Yeah, I'll put pictures and stuff probably in this video. In some photos of this outfit, I was wearing a corset style vest that I had made for my Sailor Venus Hobbit mashup costume. I don't love that. It's too, my shoulders aren't broad enough. So it's just like it sits like that on me, and the straps keep falling off my shoulders. So I wore it for some photos, but generally this is what the costume was. It was August, it was way too hot. So I didn't wear as many layers as I probably could have. And also the vest was just to keep, it was too much. So the new pieces that I got to medievalify this outfit were this belt. It's just a standard braided leather belt. I got it at my local thrift store. And my Aerosade, I believe that's how you pronounce it. It is, okay, so what I've come to find out is that kilts in medieval Scotland were known as plaids before they became kilts. They were much like this, just a giant piece of fabric. Men wore them more as skirts. Women wore them more as like an outer skirt or a second skirt. And for women, it was known as an Aerosade. For men, it was a plaid. But they weren't essentially the same-ish. There's a fantastic video that I found that I got my inspiration from on how to make this and how to wear it. Andy the Highlander is the creator that I discovered. His video, and I will link it down below in the description, he explains how to wear the plaid men's style. And yeah, his content is awesome. As a newly discovered Scots person, I'm really loving his historical information. And yeah, so that was a good resource. Anyway, so basically I will break down, I've filmed some clips on how I made this. I will break that down for you now, and then we'll come back and I will show you how I styled my finished Aerosade. So be right back. I found this beautiful checked fabric at my local thrift store, and I bought that to use for my Aerosade. It was extremely long and not quite wide enough though, so I had to alter it a little bit. Now this fabric I think is at least a cotton blend if it's not 100% cotton. It was perfectly lightweight for August. I believe historically Aerosades would have been made out of wool. I just thought that would be too much for the August heat, and also to find wool in a thrift store is very rare, and it's a pretty pricey fabric to get anyway. I was looking to do this quickly and on the cheap. So I folded it lengthwise in half and cut those two pieces apart. So now I have two halves. One, two, wee! And then before I did that, I hemmed the two ends so I would know how to put it together, because the front and back weren't as easy to tell apart with this particular fabric. So I decided which side I wanted to be the front and the back, and then I hemmed both the ends before I cut it in half so that I could just match up those hem ends, and that way the two sides they'd both be the front or back. Anyway, so I'm going to put I'm putting the reorienting it, basically. Sewing the sides together so that I'll still have a decent length, but it'll be much wider. So I can do the pleating at the back and it will be able to wrap around me. And now that it's all sewn together, I actually am quite impressed by how well I matched up the patterning, even though I did not try to do that. That was a total accident. But I did a French seam to encase that hem so it doesn't fray. And now I have a beautiful Aerosade. And we're back. Wasn't that entertaining? Okay, so basically how I was shown through the videos I found to wear the traditional Aerosade, you take the long strip of fabric and it should be at least big enough to wrap around you, preferably with extra room so you can do the pleating at the back. And generally I've seen them like at least as tall as you, because you've got like the skirt and then the flap. So basically what you do, and Andy's video, as I said, is linked below, is a really awesome rundown. He's able to show it outside, and he gets the pleating. I chose a light fabric, so I laid it out, put some pleats in the middle, stuck my belt underneath, and then laid down, tied the belt, and stood up. And what I end with is, this is as long on me as the skirt. So it comes down about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way down my calf. At the back, I got some pleating, so that's kind of cool. And then this flap, which is like half the fabric, so that's why it's longer than it is wide. One thing I thought is really cool is that they could be flipped up and worn to keep warm. Oh, it's raining. I can keep dry and warm. I've seen the Aerosade styled in such a way that it's like bustled up somehow, and like you can create little pockets in here, which I think is pretty cool. I haven't really experimented. One way I found was to grab the two corners, bring them to the back, and tuck them in the waistband. And then you get this like cute bustle effect at the back. So that was my costume. And yeah, let's move on to the other costumes, because there are 3 more. When I asked my son what he wanted to dress up-ish as for our little medieval times adventure, he said he liked the idea of being a pickpocket, an adventurer, a traveler. So I made the second of the simplest items that I created for this adventure of ours. A Ruana cloak. I'm not kidding when I say this was simple. Okay, so before I get started on the explanation, I just want to give a shout out to Living Anachronism, his Ruana cloak. And I will link that in the description below if you want to go and check out his video. Very informative. And to make my own, I found this lovely long piece of fabric. It's actually the exact same type of fabric as the skirt I'm currently wearing. It's got that like satin kind of finish on one side, and it's like suede on the other. So it's already like pre-lined. I didn't have to do anything fancy with it. I just hemmed the edges because it does fray quite a bit, this fabric. And then all I did was found the middle lengthwise and cut a slit. I cut the slit a little bit more than half of it, like folded the other way. The video that's linked in the description is far better at explaining this than I am, but there you go. Like this would be half, and I cut it to there. So a little bit more than half. And then, like I said, I just rolled a hem, sewed that down, and at the split, I just made sure to fold in the edges so it wouldn't fray. And then I added a little extra, you can see that little stitching there, a little extra stitch so that it wouldn't continue to pull as the cloak is being worn and manipulated, because I didn't want it to rip right in half. So that helps to reinforce that little bit. The beauty of this cloak is, especially for cosplaying children, is that you don't need any kind of clasp. You don't need a tie, you don't need a pin. It's just, you slide it on up to the split there, and you can just throw one side over like so. You know, your child's running around, being a goof, playing with other people, get it caught somewhere. It just slides off without choking anybody. I highly recommend Aruana. These are awesome and super simple to make. Okay, now we get a little bit more difficult. This is the project that started this entire endeavor, a cloak for my husband. I used, this is a curtain panel, and folded it in half, measured down the fold, and got 56 inches. So then from there I marked 56 inches around, like in a circle. I kept the 0 at the one end and kept moving out the measurement, as you can see, and marked and moved and marked and moved. And I did that all the way around from the one corner past the other corner to the third corner. And then I cut that mark out. The pattern that I am going off of is from a video I found a couple years ago, how to make a D&D Dungeon Master cloak. I can't remember the channel name, but she had a awesome, concise, easy to follow tutorial, and I have kept going back and using it multiple times. So I'll link it in the description below if you want to go and check out her tutorial. It's much easier to understand than anything I could do. So yeah, I'm gonna keep cutting that out. La 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 la. The worst part of this whole thing, because it was so big, was hemming it. That was a long edge to hem. If you're going to make a cloak like this for yourself or a friend or a kiddo, I highly recommend getting a fabric that doesn't fray, because if you don't have to hem it, it makes life so much easier. This was the worst part of the whole project. It's not a difficult cloak to make. Hubby decided that he wanted faux fur, and that was just too much. The faux fur and the thick curtain panel, I just thought it was too much to run through my machine. She's not industrial, And, oh, I call my machine Wendy, by the way. So, that way you know who I'm talking about. Anyway, so like Wendy is a tough little machine, but she's not industrial. So I didn't want to ask more of her than was necessary. So instead I took on the Herculean task of hand sewing. Ooh, I hate hand sewing. I don't know if it's because I didn't learn how to do it properly or if it's just because I don't practice enough, but I suck at hand sewing. My stitches are messy and I usually end up poking myself at least half a dozen times. I usually draw blood. This project was no exception. The nice thing was, though, because it was such a long stretch that needed to be sewn, I put on, I think it was through Disney Plus, it doesn't matter. I put on some nature documentaries. Yeah, it was a lot of work. And I just watched like whale documentaries because I love sea creatures. And I did that while I was sewing, and that helped to kill some time and make the task at least a little bit less tedious, although it was extremely tedious. Oh, the things we do for the love of a craft or another person. Hubby, I did this for you. Oh, he knows. Um, as well as hand sewing the fur, I also hand sewed the clasp onto the cloak because it had little leather bits that attached to the cloak. And again, as good of a machine as Wendy is, she's not industrial, and I didn't feel comfortable running the leather through her, so I hand sewed those as well. Um, that was totally worth it though, because the clasp just elevates the cloak and takes it from, well, it's costume and it still looks like a costume, but it looks like a better costume with the clasp. Yeah, this is one of those awkward voiceover. I don't really know what to say. I'm probably talking too long, but I got to fill up the space kind of situation. And I believe that's it. Yay! I finished the hand sewing. The cloak is done. It's fantastic. Yeah, it was exhausting. And just like that, voila! The cloak I made for my husband out of a curtain panel and faux fur and this really cute clasp from a really ugly shirt. The clasp is really cute though. I like that. This is like perfect length on me. It wasn't very long on my husband, but you know, I didn't want him like tripping over this thing and still look rather lordly, if I do say so myself. Absolutely worth the headache of all that hand sewing. And I can literally say that I made this cloak with my sweat, tears, and blood. Oh, what's that? That's a miniature that I made recently. And I actually have a video about it on my channel. I'll link it down below if you're interested. Shameless plug. If I'm not going to hype myself up, who else will, Okay then. And finally, the outfit that I thought would be super simple and turned out to be the most difficult, although it really wasn't that difficult compared to other things I've made and other things that could have been made. Anyway, my daughter, when given the choice, wanted to dress as an elf, woodland warrior elf, that kind of thing. So for her, we went to the thrift store and found these boots. They're a lovely, slouchy I think it's like a suede. I don't know if it's actually suede. It's probably fake, but anyway, it's a lovely slouchy with a cuff, so you could wear them up tall, or her legs weren't, her feet fit in them, but her legs weren't quite big enough, so they slouched, which ended up looking really awesome. This was the simplest part of her costume, because up next we have the tunic. Looks deceptively easy. So basically, I found this really pretty green fabric, again, at the thrift store. And it's got a slight stretch to it. What I did is, because I didn't have a ton of fabric, I was just working with what I had. And it was like a long strip of fabric. So I cut out a hole at about the middle. So I kind of folded it in half, cut out a little hole, and then put it on her like a poncho, and kind of figured out draping it on her where the side seams would go so that there were, armholes, and fixed up the neckline. This is a really nice, I don't know what kind of fabric this is, but it's really, really nice. All the edges are raw. They did not have to be hemmed, so that made life a little easier. And then cut in a little bit at the front and the back, so it would give, well, I don't know, it would give like a tunic look with like the like a deep hem, so that you can, lots of movement. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It looks like it was really easy to make, but this one caused me the headache of mental gymnastics. It was even more difficult than Hubby's cloak, just because like that one was, physically tedious. This was mentally tedious, which hurt more.
And so the Scottish lass, pickpocket, royal looking dude, and elf went to the joust and had a fair time, and they all lived happily ever after. This is what the medieval pieces looked like at the event on the day of, obviously without my family's physical forms because, privacy, they don't want to be in the video. But this is what we all looked like, and everybody loved the costumes I made. Woohoo! We all looked cool. We all had a hoot and a half for something that I had been familiar with but never really had a desire to do. It was so much fun. I am really glad that this was on Hubby's bucket list and that he was spontaneously motivated to check it off. It was a great time. Just another angle for you. This was inside the building. I really like this editing technique of turning things into stickers and then putting them on different backdrops. It really makes me feel like a photo editor, which is awesome for someone who is technologically challenged. Anyway, thank you very much, lovelies, for coming with me on this epic journey of medieval costumery. And I hope you had fun. I hope this maybe inspired you to try half-assing a costume yourself. And I will see you in the next video. Until then, be safe and take care. Bye!